I think we're gonna have to be really careful about positioning.
It's not gonna be a problem. But I could eventually get like a gun and a short bow or something.
Or you could just get 2 guns.
Or I could get 2. Welcome to what's hopefully the first playthrough video of a little black site Hametsu going on here.
Yeah.
My name is Connor. I am with Doug, the writer of Hametsu. And this is a bit of a session 0. Hametsu is a miniature tabletop game, but it does require a bit of a session 0 to get going.
Yeah. The game's designed to be played with 4 hunters. So today we're gonna kind of decide who we want to play and how we want to build them, and get all of that stuff ready so that we can actually play through the game.
Core characters, there's 9 of them.
Yep.
You have 3 in the school of stealth, 3 in the school of magic, 3 in the school of strength, and the core rulebook does have the school of corruption as well.
Right.
As part of the first campaign play.
Yep.
We're gonna stick to the original 3 schools for this playthrough, and if some of you have tuned into our streams may know, have a bit of a soft spot for a geisha. When we launched Hametsu, I played a geisha character and tried really hard to make it very viable in melee combat, which there is ways to make work, but I kind of flubbed it hard.
He didn't want to read through the Path of Legend beforehand. He wanted to kind of discover things as he went, which is fine. But as we got into like kind of the mid to later levels, he realized, oh, my geisha is just underperforming.
Not being great as a support character and not being good in melee combat at that point, I just decided to start looting everything.
While everybody else was fighting and clawing for dear life to get away from these bosses, he would run around and loot bodies and just kind of be silly.
I would also like routinely get in trouble and have to be saved by the other 3 members of our party. But got a lot of gold, just filled up those pockets. I will be running a geisha as my first character. And in this game, there is a bit of play. We are on the same team. A geisha as a support character may influence other decisions. There is some meme builds where you can run full support, full damage, and things like that. So it is pretty flexible. You could run 4 geisha, but there may be some challenging bits, some bosses that are more challenging.
Yeah, exactly.
If you had a proper tank or something.
Right.
So I'm gonna run a geisha, and then I have had an idea for a Matagi, which is the ranged hunter, ranged damage dealer. So I'm gonna run a geisha and a Matagi. In the Matagi, I am going to be going for the ranged damage. Probably skipping the traps, and I do have the spike trap that the Matagi starts with.
It's just baked into it.
It's very useful to have, especially if we have a squishy party.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it can stop movement. But that's my plan with Matagi, is those ranged weapons I want to hit big and hard. Yep. Geisha, on the other hand, for the most part, I'm going to be using my geisha to buff our allies, buff the other 3 members, and debuff the enemies. There is the ability to push some melee, to push some things like that, and I've tried that in the past. And while very fun, the geisha does benefit a lot from their mind stat.
I think I'm gonna run a gaijin, first of all.
Just give us that tank.
Right, we need to have a little bit of resilience. Especially with both of your characters being pretty squishy.
Pretty squish, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna run a gaijin as my first one. I'm really excited to play the gaijin because I love the idea of just a straight tank. The ability to just kind of sit in a group of enemies and rely on your resilience to keep you alive, I think is really fun. I'm also gonna play the Bunraku, and I really like the Bunraku class because early on, it allows you to puppet enemies. You can take control of Oni and walk around with them and do actions with them. This will be the first time for me getting to play it from 1 to 8, and then potentially into the mastery levels.
And speaking of stats, that's part of this sort of intro level, so why don't you take it away with your gaijin?
Okay, so the way stats work in the game is your mind, melee, and your ranged control like your different actions during combat, right? And they all start at 3 for every character. Now, when you create your character, you can put 3 points into those however you see fit. So my gaijin is gonna be very much melee focused, so I'm gonna put all 3 of my points into melee.
And that is the amount of dice you roll looking for successes.
Exactly.
In most cases, right?
Yep, exactly.
So my geisha really benefits from a very high mind stat.
Yeah.
Because they cast a lot of spells, a lot of things like that. And previously, I've tried to kind of split up those stats. And I think I could use a Bladesong Geisha if I went straight melee, but at this point, I'm running support, and they're there to buff my Mitagi.
The Blade Song, if you're really trying to use Ballad of the Blade, her baked-in ability, if you're really trying to do that, it takes a while to get her off the ground, and it needs like a companion and some good gear.
3 mind,
and one
3
thing
melee.
to remember too is as you're allotting these stats, each hunter has divine favor. You start with 2. These allow you to reroll during the game. You can spend a divine favor to reroll your dice or force an enemy to reroll theirs. You can spend one permanently right now to give you an extra point into your stats, but you lose 1 reroll per game. I think I'm gonna go ahead and commit to the Bunraku. I really like the idea of having a bunch of little zombies running around with us.
All right.
His starting abilities are Weaken, which allows me to cast a spell on an enemy and they suffer -1 resilience until the end of the next turn.
Okay.
It'll be helpful for low level, us getting attacks through. An ability that you will personally really like.
Yes.
Familiar with the Dead. When I loot a body, I get to roll a D6 on the lootable table instead of a D3.
That's right.
So I know we're gonna be looting a lot of bodies.
I do have to, I do be looting.
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough to not loot all the time, so.
It's all right, we can do it. For anybody that's played through some of the campaign content in the core rulebook, you'll know that there are potentially ways to get more divine favor. With the new campaign, there are potentially some ways to get even more. I will say at this point, even with all the rules that exist, it's not possible to get 6 divine favor.
Okay.
This is a little bit of future proofing, you know, but it is a thing where you're going to be able to start pumping a little more into your hunters.
All right. Resilience is baseline right here. My geisha has a baseline.
It's given to you in your
1.
class. So you'll notice that your geisha has a resilience of 1,
Yeah.
whereas my gaijin has a resilience of 3.
Yeah, he's
right off the bat.
He's real tank.
He very much is, yes.
1 on my Mitagi as well. And move is 6, which is 6 inches on the geisha, and I think the same on the Mitagi, yes. 6.
I'm fairly certain that all of the core classes start at 6.
Cool. Okay, so starting abilities. Your character comes with 2 abilities here.
Yep.
Kind of gets them going. For my geisha, I have Ballad of the Blade. If I make an attack and a song action in the same activation, so I have 2 abilities, 2 activations to use there. I can song and attack.
Yep.
Song is like a spell.
Yep.
Then I get +1 to mind, melee, and ranged until the end of the next player turn. So for the next turn. So it can be very useful for the geisha there. And then timely encouragement can donate my divine favor.
For my gaijin, I get the hefty armor ability, which says I don't suffer any negative modifiers from armor. So I can put on like the heavy plate armor or great plate or something like that, and I don't suffer the movement penalties for wearing that armor. I also get Descending Cleave, which is probably one of my favorite abilities in the game.
Yeah.
I can move the gaijin up to half his move stat, so I can move him up to 3 inches. If I get within effective range of an enemy by doing that, I get a free melee attack against him at +2 damage. So I can just kind of jump between enemies, assuming that I position myself correctly.
Mitagi from the shadows. The ranged attacks from outside the target's line of sight are considered critical and add +1 to the damage value of the weapon used for the attack.
Yeah, which is notably special because critical in the core rules states that it's melee attacks from outside line of sight. The Mitagi gets to take advantage of that with a ranged weapon. So if you position yourself correctly, you can gain a lot of extra damage from just having good positioning.
So Spike Trap from the shadows, starting abilities, and level 1 Path of Legends. For the geisha, I'm going anti-trap build, I think, across the board. So I'm going to start with Soothing Serenade.
Super good. And it'll be really helpful during our first couple of games once we push into clash phase and we start getting overwhelmed, being able to just nullify attacks is going to really help us survive.
For the Mitagi, Marked Prey, spell, mine 2, 1 enemy, within the Matagi's line of sight becomes marked. While this enemy is marked, I gain +1 line melee and ranged when targeting, and you can only mark one at a time. So the Matagi does do a lot of single target damage initially.
Yeah.
But there is a few abilities, mainly volley of arrows, that can start spreading the damage out to
Yeah, exactly. I think for my first level ability, I'm gonna take Necrotic Dart. It's a 12-inch spell. If the target takes damage from it, they only get one action during the next activation. On a boss, it actually will determine which action they lose.
Okay.
So assuming that I'm able to get it through and actually deal damage, we can really slow the enemies down.
Sick. See, we got body. I have a starting body value, right? Mm-hmm. And do I roll now to add to that, or is that on the first level?
No, you'll start with whatever your starting body is, and then as you level up, you'll roll your body dice and add that amount to it.
So body for me, 15 and 16. Not a ton of body there.
My Gaijin starts with 20, and the Bunraku starts with 15, so.
We're a little squishy, but we got some ways to deal with it.
Of our 4 hunters, only one of us has a whole lot of health. All of the rest of them are pretty squishy.
That is why we took the Gaijin, who is the best tank, and especially towards the later levels.
I think we're gonna have to be really careful about positioning and keeping those hunters like out of close combat and out of being engaged with these Oni, because it's not gonna take very many hits for them to get downed. For the Gaijin, for my first level Path of Legend, I'm gonna take Improved Resilience, which just gives me a static +1 to my resilience. The other option is Shoulder Check. If I would deal damage to an enemy, I can instead move them back 2 inches. Does apply to bosses, so I can kind of bounce bosses.
The last thing then would be gold.
Yeah, every hunter starts with 150 gold that they can use to spend on items, equipment, weapons, all of that kind of stuff.
And there is a school store.
Yeah.
Things that are just for the school. So
Exactly.
for me, both the Geisha and the Matagi are going to be in the School of Stealth.
Yep.
You are split up between School of Magic and School of Strength.
Correct.
And at 150, can't buy anything.
Probably not going to be able to get anything from your school-specific list yet.
Unless I combine my research. So go to General Goods.
We're just going all in on one item.
I mean, I could immediately buy a gun.
You could.
I could just buy a gun.
I wouldn't be mad about it because we're not really playing any classes that care about the stealth phase.
Right.
So if we want to just be super aggro from the start, it's possible.
It has a lot of damage.
It's possible.
I can only fire it once per activation.
True.
But I could eventually get like a gun and a short bow or something.
Or you could just get 2 guns.
Or I could get 2.
It is possible.
I could give my Geisha a gun. Talk about
Session 0, we're off the rails,
playing
everyone.
my song.
Yeah, right. This is the
that
song
one?
of my people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Here's what I'm gonna do. It is off the rails.
So we've gone off the rails.
I'm gonna leave my Matagi at 1 resilience.
Okay.
And they're just not gonna get in trouble.
Perfect. Spike Trap can help with that.
That's easy.
He has defensive options.
It's easy. It's not gonna be a problem. That's for you to cut in later when it's a problem.
when it's a flashback.
It's not gonna be a problem.
So the math is, I am spending 250 gold on the Geisha. I'm spending 100 gold on the Matagi.
Yep.
So that is 350 of our total 600.
Correct.
You are spending
I'm spending 25 on my Gaijin to get him the Tonto.
375.
I'm giving you 25 of his gold.
Already did that.
The Bunraku is spending 50 gold on a Sai to give me +1 resilience.
425.
And I'm spending 50 on soft armor for him.
475.
And so he will have 25 left.
He has 100 left.
Yeah,
Math checks out.
that's where we're at.
Okay, so the Biwa Does it actually have a damage profile?
It does. Yeah, it's a weapon.
I can bonk somebody with
You
it?
can certainly bonk with the biwa.
1 inch range, 1 damage,
It's not strong,
but it's something.
but it's something.
And +1 mind. They could get Lamala armor.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Get the +3,
moving,
lose the move. The -1 move actually wouldn't hurt your Mitagi hardly at all.
Especially with the range. So.
Yeah. If you start pushing into strong and precise shot, they only give you the benefit if you haven't moved
Yeah, so
yet.
I kind of want
So you're going to want him to just get where he's going to get and then snipe people from there.
And then equipment-wise, Saki would always be good. Foot spikes and grappling hook would be cool.
Grappling hook would actually be really beneficial for your Mitagi. It allows you to climb a little higher in a single turn.
So maybe some things to consider down the line. I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our characters. You mentioned you had a mini in mind for your Gaijin.
I do.
I've got some minis in mind for the Geisha Mitagi. Now, maybe doing some kit bashing as we acquired things like firearms.
Exactly.
But
it is one thing to note that the game is miniature agnostic.
Yeah.
So we do have a really nice range of minis that been sculpted for the game, and they are really nice. I love them. I think for this, we may use some other miniatures just to help kind of reinforce to people, like, you don't have to buy the range.
Yeah.
You can just play this game with what you have. Even if you want to reskin it to something else, you certainly can.
We try to include everything you need to play the game in the books.
Yep.
So you have, well, this is an older sheet, previous printed, but you also have your trap tokens you can photocopy and cut out. Essentially, if you find this book 20 years from now on a secondhand shelf or something,
Yeah, you'll be able to play the game out of it.
play it.
Yep,
So that's
exactly.
the goal of leaving it miniature agnostic. That takes care of our character setup. We would be playing on this snow table coming up,
Yeah.
which will influence little things when it comes to mission generation,
Yeah.
things like that. Cool, well, I am excited to get into it. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us through it, and hope to see you on the next video here, session 1, where we get to see just how costly my decisions were. I mean, you know how I play, and that is kill and loot pockets.
Yep. Free loot?
This is incredible. I have succeeded in my mission. GG's.
That's it.
It's good playing.
Playthrough over.